The day I became responsible for teaching the most powerful being in the galaxy how to date, I was 37 minutes late, holding a tablet full of badly translated human idioms, and absolutely certain this assignment was a clerical error. I was a cultural advisor, not a miracle worker. My job usually involved explaining why humans smiled at strangers, why we apologized when bumped into by furniture, and why saying, "It's fine," almost never meant it was fine. Romance, especially interspecies romance, was not in my job description. And yet there I was, being escorted through layers of security thick enough to stop a small war, toward a private research chamber reserved exclusively for the alien Empress herself. The official explanation was simple and terrifying. To better understand her newest allies, the Empress had ordered a comprehensive study of human courtship behavior. Not diplomacy. Not treaties. Dating. Apparently, humans had developed a reputation across the galaxy for emotional adaptability, spontaneous bonding, and something the report referred to as reckless sincerity. That last part was underlined 3 times. I assumed it was a compliment until I read the footnotes. The chamber doors opened silently, and she was already there, standing perfectly still at the center of the room, hands folded behind her back like she was inspecting a parade only she could see. She didn't turn when I entered. She didn't need to. The air itself seemed aware of her presence, as if the room was holding its breath out of respect. I had seen holos, of course. Everyone had. None of them captured the way her attention felt, like a spotlight you hadn't realized was warming your skin until it was already too late. "You are late," she said calmly. "Yes," I replied just as calmly, because panic had never once improved a situation. "In human culture, this is considered an excellent way to lower expectations." She turned then, slowly, studying me with an intensity that made my brain try to file for leave. Her expression wasn't hostile. It wasn't warm either. It was focused, like I was a puzzle piece she hadn't decided where to place yet. "Acceptable," she said after a moment. "Begin." That was it. No greeting. No threat. Just begin. I swallowed, activated my tablet, and launched into what I thought would be a harmless overview. I explained that human dating was informal, inconsistent, and deeply unscientific. That it relied on subtext, timing, and something annoyingly intangible called chemistry. I emphasized that this was purely academic. That no actual participation was required. She listened without interruption, head tilted slightly, eyes following every micro-expression on my face like she was cataloging them for later analysis. Then she asked her first question. "When humans say playing hard to get," she said, "is this a form of dominance display?" I hesitated. "Not exactly. It's more strategic uncertainty." She nodded once. "A competitive behavior, then?" "That's not." "Understood," she said, already making a note. "Proceed." I should have stopped there. I should have kept it theoretical. Instead, I made the mistake of suggesting that some concepts were better demonstrated than explained. Her eyes brightened. Just a fraction. That should have been my second warning. The first had been agreeing to this assignment at all. She stepped closer, close enough that the chamber's systems reacted instantly. The lights shifted to a softer spectrum. The ambient temperature adjusted. A gentle chime echoed through the room as an artificial voice announced that a private interaction environment had been detected and that observational barriers were being raised. Before I could ask what that meant, the doors behind me sealed with a sound that was far too final for my comfort. I turned back to her. "That's new." "Yes," she said. "The chamber has initiated a controlled bonding simulation. I didn't authorize." "You are the only human present," she replied. "Authorization is implicit." The tablet in my hand blinked and went dark. The chamber AI chimed again, cheerfully informing us that the exit would remain sealed until the simulation parameters were satisfied. I stared at the walls, at the doors, at anything except the obvious conclusion forming in my head. "What parameters?" I asked carefully. "Mutual emotional engagement," the AI replied. "Detected participant imbalance. Recommendation: Proceed with courtship behaviors. I laughed. It came out thin and unconvincing. That's hilarious. Really. But there's been a misunderstanding. This is an academic exercise. The Empress regarded the sealed doors, then me. The chamber disagrees. Of course it does. She didn't look angry. She looked intrigued. It appears, she said slowly, that my exit requires your continued participation. My mouth opened, then closed. Participation in what, exactly? She took another step closer, well within what any human would classify as personal space. Instruct me, she said. Properly. Something in her tone had changed. Not command. Request. That was my third warning, and by then it was far too late. The chamber hummed softly around us, waiting. I became acutely aware of the fact that I was standing between the most powerful being in the galaxy, and the only unlocked door out of this situation. And somehow, against all logic and self-preservation, my heart was racing like this was the most dangerous state of my life. If anyone had told me that my survival would depend on successfully teaching an alien monarch how to flirt, I would have laughed, updated my will, and taken a different career path. Yet there I stood, locked inside a royal behavioral chamber that apparently believed we were halfway through a courtship ritual, while the Empress watched me with the calm focus of someone preparing to master a new combat technique. Begin with the competitive behavior, she said. You mean playing hard to get? Yes. I pinched the bridge of my nose. It's not actually competitive. It's more like controlled unpredictability. Mild emotional distance. Suggesting interest without confirming it. She considered that for exactly 2 seconds before turning away from me and walking to the opposite side of the chamber. I blinked. What are you doing? She did not respond. Your Majesty? Still nothing. I circled slightly so I was back in her line of sight. She immediately turned her head in the other direction. You're ignoring me. Yes, she said evenly. I am difficult to acquire. That's not how. She raised a hand. Do not assist me. If this is a competition, interference would be dishonorable. It is not a competition, I said, trying not to laugh and panic at the same time. You're supposed to be subtle about it. She walked past me without so much as a glance. I watched her go. You just walked away mid-conversation. Did it provoke pursuit? Well, yes. She nodded once. Effective. I exhaled slowly. We're going to need to recalibrate your understanding of subtlety. Before I could elaborate, the chamber chimed again. Playful resistance detected, the AI announced. Compatibility metrics rising. Oh, you've got to be kidding me, I muttered. The Empress turned back, clearly pleased with the result. Continue. Fine, I said. Next is usually something low pressure. Like dinner. The chamber wasted no time. Panels slid open along the walls, revealing a table that most royal banquets would envy. It extended gracefully from the floor, already dressed in shimmering metallic fabric. Plates appeared. Then more plates. Then even more. I counted quickly. 14 courses? I said weakly. A thorough examination requires sufficient data, the AI replied. The Empress took her seat with natural authority, gesturing for me to do the same. The chair adjusted instantly to my height. I made a mental note to steal this technology if I survived. The first course arrived, something delicate and glowing faintly blue. She didn't touch it. Instead, she watched me pick up my fork. You may begin, she said. You're not eating? I am observing. I took a cautious bite. It tasted like citrus and static electricity. Her gaze sharpened. Your pupil dilation increased by 12%. Is the flavor pleasing? It is surprising. She made a small note on a hovering display beside her. Humans enjoy surprise. Not always. The next few minutes were spent with her analyzing everything from how fast I chewed to whether I favored one side of my mouth. At one point, she leaned forward slightly. Your heart rate accelerates when I maintain eye contact beyond 5 seconds, she said. That's because you're staring like you're about to interrogate me. I am attempting warmth. Try less intensity. Maybe blink occasionally. She blinked twice in rapid succession. Not that much. Somewhere between courses 5 and 6, something unexpected happened. She made a joke. It wasn't a good joke. It wasn't even structurally sound. But it was definitely an attempt. If this is courtship, she said, examining a spiraled vegetable sculpture, then humans invest remarkable resources into feeding potential mates. Is this why your species expanded so aggressively? Hunger-driven romance? I huffed a laugh before I could stop myself. She froze. You emitted a spontaneous amusement sound, she said quietly. Yeah. That means it was funny. She looked down at the plate, then back at me, and for the first time since I'd entered the chamber, her composure slipped just enough to reveal something underneath it. Satisfaction. Small, but unmistakable. The translator chose that moment to betray us. As I tried to explain nervous attraction, I mentioned, butterflies in your stomach. The chamber immediately shifted into medical alert mode. Foreign organisms suspected, the AI declared. Deploying internal scan. No, idiom, I said quickly. Moments later, I described feeling a spark. Fire suppression foam dropped from the ceiling. We both stared at the expanding white mound on the floor. She looked at me. Your language is hazardous. You're starting to understand my daily life. By the time dessert arrived, the atmosphere had changed. We were no longer sitting at opposite ends of the table. Neither of us had consciously moved closer, but the distance had narrowed until our knees nearly brushed beneath the fabric. She studied me for a long moment before speaking again. No one speaks to me this way, she said. Foam-related complaints? Casually, she clarified. Without calculation. Without fear. Well, I said lightly, you did lock me in a room with you. Fear seems inefficient at this point. A pause. Then, softer than before, she asked, is uncertainty normal for humans during courtship? I set down my fork. Only when something matters. She absorbed that in silence. The chamber lights dimmed almost imperceptibly, shifting toward warmer tones. I noticed it at the same time she did. A low hum vibrated through the floor as the table retracted gracefully back into the wall. Bond progression detected, the AI announced. Advancing to intimacy protocols. The temperature rose just enough to be noticeable. From the far side of the chamber, a platform unfolded into what was unmistakably a single, wide sleeping surface. I stared at it. Then at the AI node glowing faintly above us. You designed this place, I said. Tell me that's for observation only. She was very still as she examined the structure. It is efficient, she said at last. That's one word for it. Her gaze shifted back to me, thoughtful now, curiosity no longer hidden behind formality. And when she spoke again, her voice had lost that clinical edge entirely. Explain, she said quietly. Why my pulse is no longer steady. By the time I realized how absurdly committed the Empress had become to these lessons, it was too late to back out. The chamber had completed its initial assessments, and yet the rules were unclear, constantly shifting with the AI's interpretations of bonding protocol. I had thought the dinner exercises were the peak of ridiculousness, but the following hours proved me spectacularly wrong. The Empress, for all her disciplined composure, seemed to treat this as a genuine field experiment in human affection. Every gesture, every glance, every word from me became data to analyze, decode, and reproduce. I, on the other hand, felt like a reluctant participant in a very confusing science fair. We moved on to what the AI described as a shared rest scenario, which was technically just a way to monitor hormonal synchrony and comfort thresholds while seated or reclined near one another. It sounds tame, but the chamber's gravity and lighting adjustments made proximity unavoidable. We were on a single platform now, side by side, designed to optimize energy conservation and emotional connectivity. I tried to maintain a professional distance, but the rules were absurdly literal. The AI nudged us closer at intervals, ostensibly to increase compatibility detection metrics, and the Empress seemed entirely unconcerned with personal space, her gaze fixed on me with that same intense, calculating calm. She spoke rarely, but each word carried weight. "This proximity is irregular," she said at one point, her tone perfectly even yet tinged with curiosity. "I am uncertain how to process your presence without protocol parameters." I swallowed and attempted to explain human behavior in terms that would satisfy her analytical mind without triggering more AI interventions. "Humans aren't usually measured in protocols," I said. "We improvise. We take risks. We feel." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Feeling is inefficient. Usually," I admitted, smiling despite myself. "But sometimes necessary." A silence stretched between us, heavy and charged, the sort of pause that makes every small movement feel magnified. I realized that while she was trapped physically by the chamber, I was trapped emotionally in ways I hadn't expected. There was no malicious intent here, only curiosity and something else. Something warm, like the first crack of sunlight through a reinforced viewport. The chamber chimed again, signaling an external override attempt. Security teams were scanning for us, trying to force the doors open. Theoretically, they could end the bonding simulation at any moment, but the Empress had the final say. And she didn't choose to override it. That alone said something significant. She could have ended this and saved face, but she didn't. She was choosing to remain, to continue this absurd, intimate experiment. I shifted slightly, careful not to overstep. "You're really staying?" "Yes," she said simply. "It appears that leaving now would disrupt the study." Her voice lacked its usual imperious edge. "And perhaps, myself." I almost laughed at the candid admission, but instead I nodded. Words were useless in this moment. We were both acutely aware of the tension between us, the chamber, the AI, and our own emotions conspiring to create a situation that was equal parts hilarious, terrifying, and intimate. Then came the translator mishaps again. I attempted to explain a simple human idiom about sparks flying, and suddenly the lights flickered, and the floor vibrated gently, simulating some sort of emotional ignition, according to the AI. She didn't flinch. She merely regarded me with an unreadable expression. "Your metaphors are dangerous," she said calmly. I had to suppress a laugh. "It's a figure of speech. It may still be hazardous," she replied. At this point, I realized that every moment in her presence required the perfect balance of caution, honesty, and improvisation. Humor was a weapon, but it had to be carefully aimed. Any misstep could trigger another absurd chamber protocol, like the gravity shifts or the holographic projections meant to simulate romantic tension. Hours passed. I lost track of time. Somehow, despite all the bizarre interferences, she began to relax. Her questions became less rigid, her observations less clinical. "You are unlike any other human," she admitted quietly. "Your responses are unpredictable, yet reliable." "Thanks," I said, trying not to sound too pleased. "I think." She studied my face for a long moment, as though weighing whether honesty or deception was preferable. "I am beginning to understand uncertainty," she said. "And yet it is stimulating." I almost choked on my own breath. That one word, stimulating, was enough to make the chamber feel warmer than it had any right to be. I realized then that the AI wasn't the only system adjusting our proximity and ambient conditions. Something more organic, something entirely human, was influencing this experiment. We sat closer now, not because the chamber demanded it, but because either of us had moved away. Our legs occasionally brushed, a subtle contact that felt far more significant than any courtly gesture or studied interaction. She seemed aware of it too, though she didn't comment, only observing silently as if cataloging yet another anomaly. Then she spoke again, softer this time. "I do not wish to exit, yet." My heart skipped. Not for the AI, not for the protocols, but for her. She wasn't commanding, not ordering, not testing. She was simply stating a preference. A choice. The realization that the most powerful being in the galaxy was making this small, personal choice, to remain near me, hit harder than any threat I had ever faced. The chamber's AI buzzed faintly in the background, oblivious to the nuances of human emotion. Final compatibility phase required for chamber release, it announced. I turned to her. She looked calm, regal, and terrifyingly human all at once. There was no trace of jest, no calculation, only a quiet, intense presence. And I realized that somehow, in this ridiculous, impossible, hilarious scenario, we had crossed the point of academic exercise. We were participating in something far more unpredictable, far more intimate, and infinitely more terrifying than any protocol or lesson. The next move was ours. And neither of us seemed willing, or perhaps able, to step back. The chamber had grown so quiet that I could hear the faint harmonic pulse running through its walls, a steady reminder that something enormous was happening just beneath the surface of our shared stillness. When the AI announced the final compatibility phase, it didn't sound celebratory. It sounded inevitable. I looked at her. She looked back. For the first time since this absurd ordeal began, neither of us spoke immediately. "What does the final phase require?" I asked at last. The AI answered with cheerful indifference. "Mutual verbal acknowledgement of bond-level trust. Emotional authenticity recommended for optimal release conditions." I let out a slow breath. "So we just say we trust each other?" "Yes," the AI replied. "Falsification is discouraged. The chamber is calibrated to detect insincerity." "Of course it is." I rubbed my face, half expecting this to be another misunderstanding waiting to explode into foam or gravity fluctuations. "Your Majesty," I said carefully, "I should be clear, I'm not going to fake this. If we say it, it has to be real." "I would accept nothing less," she replied. There was no imperial edge in her voice now. No distance. Just quiet certainty. She stepped closer. Not the calculated movements from earlier. Not experimental. This was deliberate in a way that had nothing to do with research. "I have commanded fleets into collapsing stars," she said calmly. "I have negotiated peace between species that evolved to devour one another. Yet this," she gestured faintly between us, "this is unfamiliar terrain." "You're doing fine," I said. "You are unsettled," she observed. "You're the Empress of half the known galaxy. Being relaxed would be suspicious." To my surprise, the corner of her mouth lifted slightly. "I find," she said, "that you treat me as if I am merely a woman." I shrugged. "Right now you're just someone locked in a room with me, trying to pass a very invasive personality test. That perspective is refreshing." The chamber lights softened further, almost like twilight settling across the room. She studied me with that same intensity, but it had changed. It no longer felt like examination. It felt like presence. "You intimidate me," I admitted before I could overthink it. Her brows lifted slightly. "Few confess that." "Well, most people don't get trapped in bonding simulations with you. And yet you remain." I hesitated. "Because you're not what I expected," I said finally. "Clarify." "I expected someone unreachable. Untouchable. But you listen. You try. You even make jokes, questionable ones, but still. That attempt required considerable courage." "It did," I agreed gravely. She went very still for a moment before speaking again. "You unsettle me," she said. That was not a sentence I had ever imagined hearing from her. "How?" "You speak without calculation. You disagree without fear. When you look at me, you do not see a throne, and I find that I do not wish you to." Something warm spread through my chest, slow and steady. The AI chimed softly. Emotional synchronization rising. Neither of us acknowledged it. She extended her hand then, not a command, not ceremonial, simply offering it. I took it. Her fingers were warm, her grip firm but not overpowering. There was a brief moment where either of us moved, yet it felt like crossing a distance far greater than the few inches between us. State your acknowledgement, the AI prompted gently. I kept my eyes on hers. I trust you, I said. Not because you're the Empress, but because you chose to stay when you could have walked away. Something shifted in her expression. Not dramatically. Just enough to reveal the weight of the moment. And I trust you, she replied, her voice quieter than I had ever heard it. Because you could have feared me, yet you chose honesty instead. The chamber hummed. Mutual bond level trust confirmed. Unlock sequence initiated. A low vibration rolled through the floor as the sealed doors finally disengaged. For a second, either of us moved. Then the walls parted. Beyond them stood an entire corridor filled with stunned officials, security commanders, advisors, and at least one minister who looked seconds away from fainting. Silence fell so fast it was almost audible. Whispers followed. The Empress stepped forward first, every trace of uncertainty gone, authority settling over her like a mantle. I moved instinctively to give her space, but before I could retreat fully, she spoke. The human remains under my personal authority, she declared. Every head snapped toward me. I leaned slightly toward her. Is that good? Without looking back, she answered. Exceptionally. By the end of the hour, the entire palace, possibly the entire empire, knew that the Empress had been sealed inside a bonding chamber with a human cultural advisor and emerged not furious, not embarrassed, but composed. Speculation spread like wildfire. Had this been diplomatic strategy? A symbolic alliance? A new policy? No one knew. What they did know was that within days, requests for human advisors tripled across imperial space. Apparently, emotional courage was now considered a strategic resource, one humans possessed in alarming abundance. As for me, I was offered reassignment, commendations, even discreet transport off-world if I preferred distance from the political storm. Freedom. A clean escape. I declined. A few nights later, I found myself standing beside her on a private balcony overlooking a sweep of stars so bright they painted silver lines across her silhouette. For a while, we simply watched the quiet burn of distant suns. Then she spoke. Was this typical? She asked. For human courtship? I laughed softly. Not even close. That is disappointing. Oh? I find, she said, stepping a little nearer, that I prefer the unpredictable model. That's fortunate, I replied. Unpredictable is kind of our specialty. She turned toward me fully now. You once told me humans improvise, she said. Therefore, you will continue my education. There was no royal decree in her tone. Just invitation. I smiled. Careful, Your Majesty. Humans are statistically disastrous for composure. A faint glimmer of amusement touched her eyes. So I have learned, she said. We stood there together, no chamber forcing proximity, no AI interpreting our heartbeats, just two beings meeting in the vast quiet between stars. Turns out the most powerful woman in the galaxy didn't need rescuing at all. She just needed someone willing to meet her halfway. And apparently someone qualified to plan the next date.